The standard of the New Zealand papers that I read was very high indeed. I've judged many other papers around the world. I've helped to craft various IPAs, other international Effies, and I was particularly impressed by the rigour that I saw in the papers that I judged. There are a few things, having read the papers, that I think might be worth pointing out, both in terms of thinking about next year, but also just about effectiveness in general. And the first thing I'd like to say is that effectiveness starts from the front end. It's not something that you try and prove after the event. So the best papers that we saw as a jury were ones where it was clear that the business objective absolutely drove the creative idea, which absolutely delivered the results that they were looking for. There weren't anything after the event. It was absolutely crystal clear, and they took you with it step by step by step so that you nodded along throughout that journey. There were some great papers that did that. The papers that really got everybody excited, that got the jury talking, that made everybody think, God, this is fantastic, had certain things in common. They were really well crafted, they were really strong stories above all else, and they took you on a journey where it made it absolutely clear what the problem was, what the creative idea was, and how it was solved. It wasn't a series of fill in the boxes, it was a story from start to finish, and often in the tone of the brand, and they were just a pleasure to read. And they made it crystal clear for somebody who didn't know the market or didn't necessarily know the brand exactly what happened, and just such an easy read. Conversely, the papers that didn't do so well, that perhaps made it a little harder for people to get to grips with, tended to rely on jargon, media speak, weren't always as well edited as they might be, had typos or used acronyms or made references to things that the average reader wouldn't necessarily know about. So you also have to think about the audience you're writing for, not just now, but as a learning resource in the future. And the clearer that you can make it, if your mum can read it and understand it, you've done a brilliant job. In terms of proof, the best papers were those that discounted all other factors. So the moment you had a question, well, could it have been because of legislation change? No, it couldn't, because they'd already told you why it wasn't that. Could it have been because distribution increased? No, it couldn't. They'd already explained what had happened there. So what you were left with at the end of the day is a clear understanding that it was the communications and the communications alone that led to the results that we saw.